Today, we will talk about XDC, HBAR, and Casper and how they are tokenizing real-world assets that combine to a value of an estimated 1,700 trillion, which is a large enough number that's very incomprehensible, which is also 1.7 quadrillion, which is just, yeah, it just has a lot of zeros on it. So I will also explain how XRP and XLM have positioned themselves technologically to be able to handle tokenization of assets as well, but why that might look a little bit different than what XDC, HBAR, and Casper are actually concentrating on. So let's actually have an expert explain this.
This chart won't be a surprise to anyone on the call today. It really tries to capture the mammoth size of the market opportunity, addressing more than 1,700 trillion in assets, which are likely to become digital. Digitalization of all the world's assets, traditional markets, adoption of cryptocurrencies, and the tokenization of real-world assets. This is the size of the addressable market, and this is the market in which we see a huge opportunity to participate. Now, Archax really is very well positioned to capture that market growth because we really sit between and bridge the traditional and huge opportunity sets, traditional markets, adoption of cryptocurrencies, and the tokenization of real-world assets. This is the size of the addressable market, and this is the market in which we see a huge opportunity to participate.
Okay, so it's not just my opinion. These are from people and companies who are very well established within the financial technology and financial services industries. So let's begin with HBAR. I found this, and it is a very interesting example of tokenizing real-world assets, but it's a little bit of a different spin on it. So HBAR is announcing that Tokenize, which is a platform funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and what's this? It's the National Science Foundation. I guess everything has a foundation or a department now. To protect mission critical information, has launched its private beta of TFS Lite on the Hedera Consensus service. And if you open the article here, it's actually talking about tokenizing entire files and computer file systems on the Hedera Hashgraph chain. So the average cost of a breach in data is around 9.4 million, and it's estimated that the big data market will be worth 229.4 billion by 2025, which is just over a year away. And if you read how it works, the file information is transformed into chain transactions on the hybrid public permissioned TFS Lite system, which organizes and links the information on chain in a way that enables files of arbitrary type and size to be kept indefinitely in a way that provides for full verification. So what this means is that it's both public and private. So that is really good for enterprise adoption because it keeps the private information private while still being able to work on the public chain with all of the efficiencies and ease of integration that it actually allows. So if you read a little bit more here, it is permissioned, so it only trusts approved nodes. Public verification is important. It is publicly verified but kept on validated permissioned chain nodes, ensures that files are not kept on centralized storage and are later confirmed by comparing a computerized hash or sharded and kept on unverified dispersed nodes that may or may not be operational or hosted by bad actors. So it is consolidating all of the core, most important information on the permissioned chain so that it avoids packets of information ending up in the wrong hands. So it has some interesting uses that are a bit more easily understood. This one right here, in my opinion, explains it well. Unlike other chain-based systems, a file can be any arbitrary size and is verified by the Hedera consensus service chain block by blockchain block as it is kept on the chain. Retrieving the file combines these rapidly and validates the entire file seamlessly to us. Now, that, in my mind, explains it extremely well and why it will be so efficient and why HBAR is a really good choice of that. So I have another example, which I have talked about in a video I did a few weeks ago now, and I will put that in the description. And that is commercial real estate with Red Swan CRE. And I'm actually kind of personally connected to this guy online. I work in a financial services end of the commercial real estate sector that also puts my technical and engineering background to use. So it's a really interesting combination of a bunch of random things. But the important thing is that they are a company with a portfolio of 5 billion that is launching its token on the Hedera Hashgraph network. They are working to grow their portfolio and tokenized assets from 5 bill up to 25 bill in the next 36 months, which was in May. So that's really only about 2.5 years now. They chose HBAR because of its highly optimized and built for purpose Hedera token service that allows real world assets to be tokenized with speed, sustainability, security, and low fixed fees. So that is really interesting. It also can create ERC20 compliant securities because of the EVM compatible Hedera smart contract service as well. So that brings me into Casper as our next example, and I will explain more about XDC, XRP, and XLM after this. But if you are interested in this and actually learning about what these projects and their tokens and the underlying technology are all about, I would highly suggest that you subscribe, like, and comment on here to let me know what you are actually interested in. So I talk a lot about Casper. I don't think that's a surprise for a lot of you who are actually watching this, but I haven't really looked into the gaming end of crypto much yet. I haven't been interested in it because a lot of the gaming cryptos are essentially just like in-game currencies, and that doesn't really excite me. But things like Casper and Render are actually providing technology for this. So Casper is tracking and tracing capability verifiability of ownership, which is important for like in-game NFTs, operational efficiency and security, and a superior user experience. So if we actually look at what Casper Labs has on this, there is a value of about 4.37 billion in the entertainment and gaming market by 2026, with a combined aggregate growth rate of 71.4%. That is year over year. 18x. The blockchain and media, entertainment, and advertising market is expected to grow exponentially to over 15 billion by 2028, and 83% of executives intend to increase blockchain investment in the next 3 years. So you've got IP protection, which they work with IP a whole lot with their partnership with IPWE, which I will explain next. You will have verifiable ownership, which is important to for like in-game things, but it can also be about the ownership of the game itself. You have those like codes and everything, and it makes it essentially impossible to actually resell a lot of those actual games. So that would unlock a pretty valuable industry in and of itself. You have upgradable NFTs too. So they are able to offer unique opportunities for gamers to transfer digital goods between platforms. But because for example, if you have an NFT on Ethereum, it is very hard to actually upgrade that original smart contract. But with Casper's technology, they can update the NFTs at any time. And then enter the metaverse as well. I'm not too interested in that until we actually have a useful, man, yeah, that was an ugly one, and an adoptable and interoperable option for this. I don't think we are anywhere near that yet. I think we're probably a few years away at a minimum of actually having something that is actually high quality. So here's IPWE. It's impossible to not talk about this. There have been some delays with actually rolling out the beginning of the first of the 25 million patents. They were talking about beginning to mint the first 1 million about a week or a week and a half ago, and it just hasn't happened yet. But I'm not concerned about that at all. So here is the announcement from 2021 about the partnership between IPWE and Casper, and it explains it a bit more here, but it's not a whole lot. So if we go here to the case review, it just explains a little bit more about why Casper and IPWE actually decided to team up. So it is interesting how it will work, because again, it involves the hyper ledger as well, which I always immediately tie back to IBM and IBM's heavy involvement with XLM as well. So it has a lot of information here, obviously, but essentially it is intellectual property and patents kept on chain as NFTs, which do operate on the upgradable smart contract that Casper has, and just the IPWE rollout is worth an estimated 7 to 10 billion. The actual S&P 500 is worth about 34 trillion, and about 90% of that value at the high end is actually in intellectual property and patents, which is about 31 trillion. And Casper has been concentrating on this for a long time, and they have about 40 other partners and projects under NDA right now. So I imagine that Casper can and will capture a lot of this IP NFT market. Yeah, so that was actually explained here. For example, Porsche, which is part of IPWe's portfolio, I believe. I saw that in an article, I think. It's about $22.92 billion worth of IP, which is 2.5 larger than Porsche's actual market value of 8.86 billion. So that is a really big deal, not only for Casper, but not just for it right now, but where it can go. So here is a mind map that got ripped off of Tokenizer, essentially. But let's just remind everybody of the connections. Casper with IBM and Hyperledger, Quant and IBM Hyperledger that connects together. Casper and IPWe Japan and Deloitte as well, and Quant in Japan, the patent approval. So it just overlaps really well with Quant, which I am into as well. So now we talk about XDC. I have talked a lot about XDC over the last month or so, and it's just so incredibly valuable, especially with R3 Corda's concentration on the trade finance industry. So, but first I have an example with XDC tokenizing assets. U.S. Treasuries arrived to XDC Network as the digital bond market expands. This has expanded to 622 million this year as real world assets on chain keep expanding. I used expand like 5 times in a minute there. I apologize. But that was from the end of August 2023. Tokenization of real world assets such as government bonds could grow to a $5 trillion market. It explains the involvement with trade tech as well, which we will touch on here. It doesn't have a lot of things other than just kind of general information there. But if we look at trade finance on the XDC Foundation website, it explains how by tokenizing trade finance assets, it can help SMEs, which are small to medium enterprises, invest in the actual trade finance assets. And that has a market gap of about 1.7 trillion as of 2022. It doesn't mention the trade finance total market estimated value in here, which I think is low, but that is 25 trillion. And this right here from XDC, it has hosted its first ever trade finance NFT. So they already have tokenized trade finance real world assets all of the way back in November of 2022. So the XDC network is relatively young in 2019. But I think that obviously the important part is that trade finance represents an estimated 80 to 90% of global trade volumes and exceeds 25 trillion. It is a low-risk source of funding, yet a large portion of SMEs do not have access to it just because it is a very expensive industry. So yeah, it just doesn't have the collateral, credit worthiness, and the inside knowledge about how trade finance actually works to be able to successfully invest in it. But if we're tokenizing things and it's more accessible and those assets might be controlled by someone else, then it's just like investing in a stock, essentially. They in September 2021, they actually hosted the first trade finance based non-fungible token by Trade Tech. They packaged trade finance assets and issued an NFT to represent their value on the NFT network. An investor could buy and sell that token that represented the value of the off-chain pool of actual trade finance assets. So that right there is huge. And then we have R3 actually tokenizing gold. I actually did a video on this the other day. I will link to that below as well. But there is another one that is directly advertising their XDC network involvement, which is Comtech as well. They are tokenizing gold as well. I always prefer to just have gold and silver in hand, but at least you're not buying paper derivatives of gold and silver, which if and when the economy actually gets bad enough, then those paper representations of those assets won't really be worth as much as the actual assets. So here is the XDC e-bill of lading process, which is one more thing that XDC is concentrating on tokenizing in the trade finance industry, is the actual legal documentation of the actual trade process itself. And it did that in October, I think, and I believe I did a video on that. I can't remember, or I at least talked about it in one. But you've got the connection to Trade Finex here, which is a trade finance platform that is directly powered by the XDC protocol. But in this same post, we have an example of Ripple and XRP tying into tokenizing cash, essentially, for the commercial real estate industry. This is in Hong Kong. It is working with Toko as well, which I've mentioned them before. I can't remember what the hell it is off of the top of my head, but this is tokenization of fiat or cash with a CBDC, and it's about the actual home loan end of things. So here it's explained a lot more. You have the loan application, which a CBDC wallet will be automatically created. A tokenized version of the lien on the actual property will be created and then allocated to that person. And it's talking about a home equity line of credit here. So the person will be able to draw down their line of credit funds. You have a repayment period on that line of credit, and then you close the loan, all with a tokenized CBDC with Ripple that will have to run on the XRPL. Here is another article about that. Actually, this one is from after it was actually announced a lot more. This one was just about the announcement in a pilot, so I'll skip that. And actually, that's probably kind of and that right there is, I think, the first announcement about the actual demonstration of it itself from May. So I had those in the exact opposite order. But here's an interesting take. In this video here, we talked about by 2030 or something around there. I think that the real world asset tokenization industry will be very, very large by 2030, but I think within the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, so end of 2025-ish to like 2028, I think we will grow much quicker than what these experts are actually talking about. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on regulatory clarity, particularly in the US, because if you tokenize US real world assets, a lot of investors from a lot of other countries like to invest in US assets just because of the comparative power of our economy. And that timeline opinion I have is kind of reflected here by David Schwartz, but he is talking about the XRPL. Tokenization on XRPL should begin in a year and a half in the real world, and that was from about a month ago. So we're looking at 2026-ish. So that's okay. And I just wanted to remind everybody that XRP and XLM both have these freeze and clawback proposals, or they are currently on there. I think XLM actually has that on there, but those are things that financial institutions would need to actually be able to trust putting their assets on chain, because if anything happened, if there was a dispute or fraud, then that asset is actually coded in a way where if you went through the proper protocol, it could actually be taken back, at least to a certain extent.